Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Today, we're going through a CISO daily update from December 10th, 2024. These updates are usually for CISOs, folks in charge of cybersecurity at big companies.
Right.
But the insights are really for everybody. Like, we're all living in this digital world, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of like, if you think about it, it's like we're all navigating this city like a digital city.
Yeah.
And it has its own rules and its own dangers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So understanding the cybersecurity threats that are out there, it's essential for anybody that uses technology.
Yeah, it's like the street smarts for the digital age. And this update really highlights how vulnerable we all are. Hornet Security, they analyzed a ton of emails.
Oh, wow.
Over 55 billion business emails, and they found that 36.9% of them were unwanted.
Wow.
With 2.3% containing malicious content.
Oh, my goodness.
That's a little...
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a huge problem, right? Like,
Yeah.
when you think about it, that's a huge percentage.
So it's a stark reminder that we're not talking about a few isolated incidents here. It's a constant bombardment of attempts to breach systems and get our data.
So what kinds of things lead to these vulnerabilities, like that Datavant breach where all that children's data was exposed?
Oh, yeah, the Datavant breach. It looks like one employee's email account was compromised. And from there, the attackers were able to access data on over 11,000 children.
Wow.
Sensitive data, right? And it really shows how important phishing awareness training is.
Right.
Like, companies need to train their employees about phishing, about social engineering tactics, how to spot a suspicious email.
Right. It's a good reminder that even a small slip-up can have huge consequences.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder about your own online habits and how careful you are with your own information.
Absolutely. We all need to be more vigilant. And it's not just about individual awareness. Companies need to step up too, right? Things like multi-factor authentication to add those layers of protection.
Speaking of strong security measures, the update mentioned that Artivion, a medical device maker, got hit by a ransomware attack, which is scary because medical devices, that's pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, you're right. It's a disturbing trend we're seeing. Ransomware gangs are going after critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
Hospitals,
Yeah.
power grids, transportation systems. I mean, imagine if a hospital system got locked down during an emergency.
That's scary. That's right out of a...
It's like a movie, right?
Maybe, yeah.
Right.
And it's not just big companies that are vulnerable. The Wayne Westland School District in Michigan, they got hit by a cyber attack, too.
Right.
Took down their internet and their phone service.
Oh, wow.
Teachers had to get creative.
I bet.
They found workarounds. But, what can we do to better protect institutions like that? Schools and hospitals.
Yeah, schools are becoming more reliant on technology these days, which makes them targets for cyber criminals. This particular attack highlights the need for those incident response plans.
Yeah.
That are not just for businesses.
Yeah.
But for all organizations, right?
Yeah.
Schools, hospitals.
It seems like everyone's a target. The report even mentioned this massive botnet called SOC 5 Systems, which has taken over 85,000 devices all over the world.
Wow.
Can you explain what exactly is a botnet?
Sure. So a botnet is basically like a network of computers, right, that have been infected.
Yeah.
And they're controlled remotely without the owner's knowledge. So basically, these computers are zombies doing the bidding of whoever's controlling them.
Scary.
Yeah, and they can be used for all sorts of bad things, launching attacks, spreading spam and malware. And in this case, SOC 5 Systems, they're using these hijacked devices to power this illegal proxy service.
So basically, my computer could be part of a criminal network without me even knowing it.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's scary. And these cyber criminals, they just keep getting more and more sophisticated, don't they?
They do.
With ransomware group Blockbasta, they've upped their game. Email bombing, QR code scams, impersonation, trying to trick people.
Yeah, the bad guys are definitely getting smarter. And it really highlights this constant evolution of cybersecurity, right? It's like an arms race between attackers and defenders.
So how do we stay ahead of the curve? What vulnerabilities should we be watching out for right now?
Well, new vulnerabilities are discovered all the time.
Yeah.
For instance, the update mentioned that QNAP and Synology, which make those network-attached storage devices, they both issued patches for vulnerabilities.
Oh, I have one of those. You use them to back up your computer, store your files.
Exactly. They seem like simple devices, but they can be vulnerable if you don't keep them up to date. This is a good reminder that you got to keep all your software updated.
Right.
Not just your computer or phone, your router, your smart devices, everything.
It's like digital hygiene. for our devices.
Precisely.
But updating software doesn't always solve the problem, right? Like the update also mentioned, a critical vulnerability in Quillic sense.
You're right. That's a business intelligence software.
Right.
And this vulnerability, it could allow for something called remote code execution.
Oh, what's that?
Basically, it means someone could take control of your system from afar.
That's scary.
Yeah, it's a big deal, especially for small and medium businesses that might rely on quick sense, for their data analysis. Unpatched vulnerabilities like this can be an open door for attackers.
So you're saying even big companies like Microsoft can get hacked?
Yeah, even the giants aren't immune.
It makes you wonder, are companies doing enough to protect themselves from these advanced threats?
That's a great question. And it's something that security professionals wrestle with all the time. It's not just about installing antivirus software anymore. You need layered defenses. You need threat intelligence to stay ahead of the curve. And you need a solid incident response plan in case something does happen.
Right. So we've talked about the immediate threats, breaches, attacks, vulnerabilities. But the CISO daily update also included some special reports that looked at the bigger picture. And one that caught my eye was the report on API attacks. Apparently, there's been a 3,000% surge in these attacks, which is huge.
That's massive. And it shows how the threat landscape is changing.
So APIs, they're application programming interfaces.
Right.
But for folks who don't know,
Yeah.
what exactly are those?
So APIs, they're basically like the messengers of the internet. They allow different applications to talk to each other and share data.
Oh, okay.
So like, for example, when you use an app to order food, right? API is what connects that app to the restaurant system.
Okay. Yeah. So they're kind of like the glue that holds the internet together. So I can see why they'd be attractive targets for hackers.
Yeah. APIs, they often handle sensitive data. And if they're not properly secured, they can be a weak link. Plus, with the rise of cloud computing and interconnected services, there are just more APIs out there than ever before, which creates a bigger attack surface.
So it's like the more convenient and interconnected our digital world becomes, the more vulnerable we are.
That way, yeah.
Okay, so what are some examples of these API attacks? And what can we do to protect ourselves?
So there are many different types of API attacks. Some common ones include injection attacks, where malicious code is inserted into the API, and denial of service attacks, where the API is flooded with requests, making it unavailable to legitimate users.
And those are actually happening, right?
Oh, yeah. There were high-profile vulnerabilities just recently in the Metabase GeoJSON API and Versa networks.
So these aren't just theoretical things.
Nope. These are real-world attacks.
So what can developers and companies do to make their APIs more secure?
It's a multifaceted approach, really. Developers need to build security in from the beginning, right from the ground up, considering potential threats at every stage. And companies, they need to implement robust API security testing and monitoring so they can detect and respond to attacks quickly.
So it's a lot of work.
It is.
But is there anything we as individuals can do?
Absolutely. One important step is to be careful about the permissions you grant to apps that use APIs.
Oh, right.
Think twice before you allow an app to access your contacts, your location, or other sensitive information.
Okay.
Also, using strong passwords and enabling multi-factor authentication can make it harder for attackers to get into your accounts, even if they exploit an API vulnerability.
Okay, so again, it goes back to those basic security practices.
It all ties together.
Right.
Good security is all about layers.
Yeah.
The more layers of protection you have, the harder it is for attackers to succeed.
So let's move on to another special report that really stood out to me, generative AI. I find it so fascinating. But the report, it highlighted some of the energy demands and the security risks associated with it. Like training these massive AI models, it can consume 7 times more electricity than traditional computing.
That's true.
Yeah.
AI, especially these large language models, they have a big energy footprint.
Right.
And that raises some important questions about sustainability and the environmental impact of this technology. Not to mention, a strained power grid is a vulnerable one, especially when you consider that those power grids are increasingly targeted by cyber attacks themselves.
Right, so it's like a double whammy. We're using AI to do all these great things, but it's also creating these new challenges.
Absolutely. The report actually called for a partnership between the public and private sectors to tackle these issues.
That's interesting.
So we need government agencies like CISA, the Department of Energy, NIST, working with private companies to find solutions
Yeah.
that balance innovation
Yeah.
with security and sustainability.
Right, because it's a complex problem
It is.
that needs a collaborative solution.
Yeah.
But aside from the energy concerns, are there other security risks associated with AI?
There are. One concern is the potential for misuse by bad actors. For example, AI could be used to create very convincing phishing emails
Mm-hmm.
or social media posts that spread misinformation.
Wow.
Imagine
Yeah.
an AI generating content
It-
that's so believable that it could manipulate public opinion or even sway elections.
That's scary. It sounds like some out of a sci-fi movie.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's a real possibility
Yeah.
if we're not careful.
So what can we do to prevent that kind of misuse?
Well, one important area is securing those foundational models themselves. Make sure they're not vulnerable to attacks or manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
We also need to think about the security of the data that's used to train these AI systems.
Right.
Because if the data is biased or corrupted, it could lead to the AI making harmful or discriminatory decisions.
So it's not just about the technology, it's also about the data that feeds it.
Exactly.
It seems like we need to be thinking about AI security from a lot of different angles.
We do.
From breaches and botnets to API attacks and AI anxieties. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. And it's clear that the cybersecurity landscape, it's constantly evolving, becoming more complex and more challenging.
So what does all this mean for our listeners who've been following along on this whirlwind tour of all these digital danger zones?
I think it means that awareness is more important than ever.
Uh-huh.
The more you understand the threats, the better you can protect yourself.
Yeah.
And remember,
Uh-huh.
you don't have to be a tech expert to be cyber aware.
Right.
It's about adopting those simple everyday habits that can greatly reduce your risk.
So give us some practical advice, things our listeners can do right now to improve their cybersecurity hygiene.
We'll start with the basics. Strong, unique passwords for all your online accounts and enable multi-factor authentication wherever you can. Think of it as adding an extra lock on your digital door.
Okay, so that's something everyone can do, even if you're not a tech expert.
Exactly.
How does-
Be cautious about clicking on links
Right.
or opening attachments in emails, especially if they're from someone you don't know. Phishing attacks are getting more sophisticated. Don't assume you can always spot a fake. Hover over links to see the actual URL. And when in doubt, contact the sender directly to make sure it's legit.
So basically, don't take things at face value.
Right.
Be a little skeptical.
Exactly.
Duh.
Keep your software updated.
Right.
Those updates often include security patches that fix vulnerabilities that hackers could exploit. And remember, this includes not just your computer and phone, but your router, your smart home devices, anything connected to the internet.
Like we were saying, digital hygiene for all our devices.
That's it.
Okay, what about our online behavior? Are there things we should be doing differently there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Be careful about what you share online.
Right.
Think twice before you post sensitive information on social media.
Uh-huh.
And be mindful of the permissions you give to apps.
Yeah.
The less information you expose, the smaller your attack surface.
Right, because oversharing can make you a bigger target. So it's all about being aware, being cautious, and treating our digital lives with the same care that we treat our physical safety.
Well said. I like that.
Cybersecurity isn't just about technology, it's about behavior and awareness.
It is.
We all have a role to play in keeping ourselves and our data safe.
Yeah, it's like cybersecurity isn't just about the tech stuff. It's about how we act online, too.
It's like being street smart, but in the digital world, right?
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into cybersecurity, what's the one thing you really want our listeners to remember?
Well, the threats are always changing. But if we stay informed and we practice good security habits, we can all be safer online. It's not about being scared. It's about knowing how to protect ourselves.
I like that. Empowered, not fearful. So to everyone listening, we hope this deep dive has given you some good insights and maybe even inspired you to improve your own cybersecurity. You don't need to be a tech whiz to do it. Every little step counts.
And if you want to learn more, check out the full CISO daily update from December 10th, 2024. We'll link to it in the show notes.
Perfect. So here's a question for you to think about. What's one thing you can do today to improve your cybersecurity? Maybe change a password or turn on two-factor authentication. Every little bit helps. And with that, we're signing off, hoping your day stays breach-free. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep on learning.
It really is. It's about thinking of those digital streets and how we can stay safe out there.
So true. Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive today into this crazy world of cybersecurity. Any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
The threats are always changing, right? But the good news is we can all be safer by staying informed and following good security practices. It's not about living in fear. It's about being empowered, knowing that we can take steps
Yeah,
to protect ourselves.
I'd love that. Empowered, not afraid. To all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned a thing or two, and maybe you're even feeling a little inspired to up your own cybersecurity game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Remember, you don't have to be a tech expert to make a difference.
Every little bit helps.
If you're looking to learn more,
Yeah.
we highly recommend checking out the full CISO daily update from December 10th, 2024. We'll have a link to it in the show notes.
For sure.
So, as we sign off today, here's a little something to think about. What's one action, just one thing, you can do today to boost your cybersecurity? Maybe it's changing a weak password or finally turning on that two-factor authentication. It all makes a difference. And with that, we're out. Stay safe out there, everyone, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.